So you found us.
What is it trying to tell us?
No strings, no catch. You own everything.
Now stay tuned to Rock Flux.
Well, Tony Caravan here for another edition of Tony Caravan Live, the morning show. And for some reason, participants, let's see if that does anything. There seems to be something wrong with my chat. Edit. Live chat. Enable slow mode. Enable live chat. Let's take it on and off. Edit moderators. Allow live chat to play. Allow live chat to replay. Save. Well, I'm not showing any chat. However, I did receive a notification. Now live on your channel. Danger, Will Robinson. We'll get into that in a second. I don't know why the chat thing's not showing. It's kind of weird. This whole Adobe.
Good morning.
Good morning to you too, and welcome to our, numerous fans in the audience. Yeah, I don't even have that many. As it said in the description, which I don't even know if that's working, I made some cold brew coffee today in my morning show mug, which you can't see. And I neglected to say in there that I might as well put it in. Edit. The flow of consciousness has led me to home brewed iced coffee, ice coffee / vanilla cocoa with black cherry, diet black cherry. Let's be specific. Diet black cherry soda added for flavoring. I truly have gone mad. But on with the show. Save. Let's see if this says anything about chat down here. Save. Well, no matter. My chair sunk. I am wearing the most comfortable shirt. Did laundry yesterday. You don't know what you don't know. Most comfortable shirt in America. You can't tell it, but I basically have like a little starting to get a suntan because it was nice yesterday. It was nice. I think I may have shown this in yesterday's video. For those who have never seen a Tony Caravan live show before, and that is a lot. Well, anyway, this is what they were doing outside my front window yesterday. That's like the world's biggest saw. If you look closely towards the bottom, it's like they're sawing open the street. This is like fixing the sewer systems, allegedly. I don't know, man. This gives you a different perspective. Maybe you can see from the distance how it's pretty crazy. I added this thing on. And I bought this thing on Amazon. This is on the side of my porch, so I don't have to look at my neighbor. But the thing's a piece of junk. But, this is like the weather back in my in the daytime when I was out there close to noon. So anyway, let's get into it.
Weekend weather.
And time for the weekend weather. Currently, it's 5:09 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the former United States. I'm located in the mid-Atlantic states. It's 52 degrees on the outside. Supposed to get up to at least the high 60s, I believe, today. Tomorrow it'll be tomorrow it'll be 72 degrees and 57 overnight. Sunday, 70 degrees, 50 overnight. Monday, 70 degrees, 52 overnight. Tuesday, 66 and getting down to 46. That's where I'm getting scared. I don't know if it's going to up to 70 or not today. And that was your
Weekend weather.
Isn't that fun?
Hey, you're Forbes and Harrington, ain't you? Ain't you the guys that was up in space?
Yeah, but we can still buy a couple of beers for 30 cents Earth money.
Hey, you bet your life, but your money's no good here. The drinks are in the house. I don't get to serve many celebrities. Now drink up, boys.
Oh, thanks.
I don't even care that you cracked up the ship. And I'm a taxpayer.
Say, what's it like up there in outer space?
Well, it's like way out.
It's like way out, man. It's like Alan Watts. I've quoted him before. He goes, "We're already out." You know, it's like my criticisms of Elon Musk and people like that. It's like we're already out in space, way out in space. Excuse me. We're hurling through space on this rock. That's why I call my YouTube channel Rock Flux. You know, and we're already way out in space. We don't need to go to Mars. We don't need to go anywhere like that. Because
all your life you will remember this night, and you'll know whom you have turned loose upon the world.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
I wasn't going to just deal with one person at a time, but why not?
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Anyway, this is a pretty good mix. So you take a like a shaker bottle. Well, I got one. I'm not using my official Tony Caravan one, but you get the idea. You know, one of these kind of things. Here. Something you could shake up, right? Seal it good so you can shake it. And put a couple cubes in it. Put in a little filtered water. 3 scoops of instant coffee. Folgers is my preferred brand. I'm not sponsored by Folgers. I'm not sponsored by anybody. I'm not even monetized. And then add the rest of the water. Shake it up, bartender style. And then pour it into a morning show with Tony C mug. There you go. And add a little bit of I used Hanson's Diet Black Cherry Soda. And you know, this stuff is so good. Not necessarily the Hanson soda. I mean, that's not bad. It's not as good as ShopRite brand Diet Black Cherry, which I don't know if it's still available. I haven't bought from ShopRite in like ages. We could do a real quick check here. Let's see. What's going on? You know, people are saying, what's this Will Robinson? What's this space junk thing? Diet Black Cherry Soda. ShopRite. Let's see what happens. ShopRite, one word. Now, let me see. ShopRite soda. Somebody did an analysis of it, so it must still exist. 0 calories. Okay. ShopRite soda, 12 ounce. 12 pack. What's this Instacart thing? I don't mean to waste your time, but, you know, these are important things. Very important things. The Fresh Grocer. I talk about this stuff, and I just want to make sure it's still available. That link seems to be a dead link. Diet soda can at ShopRite Instacart. ShopRite Instacart. Get what you love from ShopRite delivered to you. It's got my zip code. Shop at ShopRite. Available where I am. Should I continue with Google? Yeah, because they continue with Google. I'm just gonna see if it's on the shop on the item since I've mentioned it. Select store for delivery. Not available here. Okay, I'm back. That was a nice little
Here's what's happening.
Okay, so here's what's happening. We're ready to rock and roll on the show. That's slurping. What happens is you put the coffee in, then you add the diet cherry cola, and then it like foams up a bit. Okay. And that's when it like somehow interacts and it gives it like a head. There's no way I can show that on this camera. And under this edit scene thing, it doesn't give me a choice of changing cameras. I bought another camera like online. You could buy like a USB camera and a webcam now real cheap because everything's got a camera hooked up to it. But I use these old computers and I was going to do some webcasting from my bar or next time I had had a drinking session. But I'm using an older iMac in there because I have music on there. Fortunately, iTunes still works, though it's funky. I think I talked about this before. Even though I purchased these songs from iTunes. When I try to add them there, it says you're not authorized to play this song. What's your email and password? And so I haven't overdone my number of computers that I'm authorized to use on. So that computer's authorized to use it. I put in an email and password, and then it just like pretends can't contact the server, though I'm connected through clearly through Wi-Fi. And what it is it's Apple just basically not wanting you to use old computers and, old software. Like you can't use email on about three OS systems back. You can't even use email or the internet. You can't even, I don't even know on Safari one back or so, like you can't do this. You can't live broadcast. And right now I'm broadcasting through Chrome because I think I was having a problem with Safari. But if there is anyone who's trying to chat, I can't chat. And the whole chat window area is completely just like it's there, but there's nothing on it. And I had clicked on something before. So I don't even know if this show, I got a notification that this is live, but I have no idea what's going on. No idea whatsoever. So let's do our sponsor thing for the day. As you can see, I've got a Game Over hat. And of course, you don't know what you don't know. T-shirts are available at TonyCaravanLive.com. And the Jackery and the wind-up solar radio. And geez, that's just too bright for my how do I get the great solar stuff logo you can see there in the back? Let's grab this.
6:46 a.m. and sunset is at 7:48 p.m. An area of low pressure crawling through the Great Lakes will spread clouds and rain showers into Pennsylvania overnight and the first part of Friday.
So as you can see, you've got NOAA radio, AM, FM, a solar panel on the top. That kind of shine. There it is. Solar panel. A reading light. Yeah, that's bright. A flashlight, which is ridiculously bright. You can wind up, charge it with this thing. There's a thing on the thing back that you could just like wind it up if there's no sun or you're hiding out in a closet. But the pasta resistance are the mini and the regular USB ports on the side, the little waterproof, water resistant cover that allow you to emergency charge your cell phone. $35. Go to TonyCaravanLive.com and get one. I mean, think of it.
Lows in the lower 50s. Southeast winds 5 to 10 miles.
In other words, and you'll get all the official storm stuff from the NOAA Weather Channel, even if the other channels go down. And you get your flashlight, you get your reading light, you could solar power it, wind up power it, recharge your cell phone in emergency. And there's no batteries. It's crazy. If you get one of these suckers, you could just use a regular wall outlet type of plug into the thing here. And there's a couple of USB ports here. We tested this thing intensely. I've been on a kick about that moron. Yeah, some guy's got, I don't know what he's up to now, 75,000 views reviewing that thing which he probably copied from me because I reviewed it, like a month ago or so, put it through the test, and I got one view. Yeah, this isn't bad. I mean, it's just interesting. It blends. Unlike yesterday's, what were we trying to blend yesterday? Coffee and root beer or something? Or the other day? Almost heard a wheeze in there. All right, I guess I'm not going to delay anymore. I've been delaying, haven't I? Yeah. I've been delaying.
Let's get this show on the road.
TGIF. I may or may not have a few cocktails later on this afternoon. I don't know. Friend of mine is doing some equestrian thing in a neighboring town about, I don't know, half hour away or so. Said she might stop by afterward, which means that gives me since I don't drive, I don't have a license anymore. I let it expire and I don't drive, got rid of my car. Why? It wasn't worth the expense, to live free. So sometimes when you live free, you have to make a few sacrifices. Some people can't imagine the idea of living without a car, but it's really not that bad. It's a minor inconvenience certain times, maybe once a month or once every 2 months. It's a minor inconvenience. That's about it. Though it does restrict me from visiting people, but the problem is I'm so far away from people I know that I would have to have like a new car to risk, it's like if I had some old used thing, it'd be a risk. That's how far away I am from stuff, from people. Though, I mean, not that I'm far away from civilization. Like I said, yesterday morning, I walked up the convenience store and bought 2 Diet Pepsis, which, I could have done today, but I thought, well, I'm just going to try this drink because I'm walking to the grocery store in about an hour and a half when the show is over. Because I've got my EBT card, which is the equivalent of food stamps, charged up. See, this is a weird thing. But like I said, I have no shame. I don't mind talking about this stuff. because you've got to play you got to play the game of life. We'll get to the space junk in a while. Okay, we'll get there. Don't worry. And Danger Will Robinson, there's a reason for that. Okay, don't worry about that. Everything will come and make sense.
This is Metropolitan Police speaking. Metropolitan Police speaking. All persons are warned to stay off the streets. All persons are warned to stay off the streets.
But we'll get to that in a second. So when you retire, okay. So I was trying to get into this yesterday, and this will all make sense. You have a choice. You can be rich or poor, to use simple layman words. Like, did you ever watch that guy Lionel? You know who I'm talking about? He forces himself constantly to find these, great words, right? And he's not satisfied with using one, but he has to use three. So he has to say, like, the differential, or the way we differentiated from, and it's like, yeah, man, people watching your show, they know. He's a lawyer, so it's like, he's a conspiracy theorist, or he's kind of mellowing out on that now. I notice his numbers are going down. He's not watching me, but if he does, Lionel, get with it. At least you've got like in the thousands. I've got none. I've got one or none. My chat's not working. I think the only person watching me is the NSA, though that doesn't make any sense, because I don't see why the NSA or CIA should even exist anymore. Right? You've got big tech and big data who have all that info. And they've got more and better ways of collecting it. Think about that. Yeah. So, that's why I say, when I talk about the corporatocracy, it's like, who's really in charge? Who's really in charge? Right? A bunch of grocery store clerks, at Quantico, or Virginia, Langley, these various other sites, locations, undisclosed locations, infiltrated, Operation Mockingbird, all this nonsense. So who's really in the know right now? Obviously the media doesn't know anything. They take the scripts from the corporatocracy, because they're owned by the corporatocracy, right? But the bureaucrats, like I still say, I said it in one of my videos, I got into it like really big time. I just don't see those agencies surviving. I just don't. They exist because, we have big government. That's the concept here. And, we have the former Fed chairman as the head Treasury secretary. So they can just create money out of thin air. Money's just a ledger in the cloud, so trillions of dollars no longer mean anything. There was a time when the word trillion would never even been spoken. A billionaire would have been thought of as like, a Bond villain type of person, which they are. But, to be a millionaire, right? They used to make movies. How to Marry a Millionaire, right? All this stuff. That was it. That was it's like that song at 17. That would be the certain type of girl's dream, to marry young, then retire. Remember that line from Janice Ian at 17? Who married young and then retired, right? That was a great concept, I used to think, oh yeah, lucky them. That sounds like fun, right? Yeah. These girls just got married out of high school. Then they retired. Can't blame them, And the funny thing about that is, not funny, ha ha, but just funny in a funny sort of way, is that, it's a cool thing. Delayed reaction. Delayed reaction. But, no, I was going to say, the funny thing about that is that a lot of those people were the people who stayed together and actually never got divorced and raised good families and good kids, right? Married young, then retired, because they wanted to be a mom, right? They wanted to be, whatever the word that no one wants to say, housewife, right? But they got all their gadgets and stuff at that time, we're going back. Remember the civil rights movement was over. The feminist movement had been like, they were all victories, right? People today don't know that's like old 50-year-old news, right? But there were still, there were that type of people. And so, and hats off to them. And like I've said on several shows in the past, sometimes I regret not doing that, going that route myself. It's an amazing, weird combination. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but I'm a mixologist. I don't have a license. I'm not a licensed mixologist. I just play one on the internet. After all, this is
the station for more fun in the sun. Fun radio.
I think so. I was watching a little bit of this Lionel yesterday. I can't take him for too long. I try though, If I have a speaker in my bathroom, so if I'm watching, I watch YouTube on my TV upstairs, where I have my chair, my wing chair or whatever, and of course I've got a little bit of wheeze in there. I don't know what that's about. It's like a little thing in there. The plague. 2-year-old plague. They're still pushing it. Like Tattoo said, and showed me one of those videos. And one of the guys said, this thing isn't even novel. It's just, and I'm the guy who looked at this, who had a test last year. I've talked about that. Tested negative. And the test says SARS-2. But anyway, that's the thing. One of the things that they're covering up right now is this idea of that this isn't a novel thing. It's just SARS. In other words, it's just a variant of SARS. It's, so it's SARS-2. It even said it on the test last year. I don't know what they're doing now. I haven't been tested since. Though I understand testing has become a $91 billion a year business. And that's one of the reasons they're keeping us alive. Not to mention that they want to, that the shot business is like worth, hundreds of. But I wonder why. That's what you do with a mustache. You get stuff on it. I wonder why my chat disappeared. It's not as if a lot of people were using it or if there's anything there. I wonder if it's a first step in them going after me. I'm clearly convinced that, there is some kind of game being played, but that I still don't mind doing this. I'm going to do this because, like I said, I do it for myself now. I watch these things. So I already got something. Keep your account secure. Instacart. Prepare your. Well, I'm not interested in that because you didn't have ShopRite for me. That's the problem with these algorithms and stuff and the internet. They like say they do something, but they don't because it's an algorithm. It's a computer. That's why AI is never going to take over. And as sophisticated as the AI discussions as I got into, like when I was doing the AI thing, there's certain aspects of that just naturally just don't compute like we do. First of all, our human brain is way more sophisticated than any computer on the earth. And that includes, all these hidden computers that they already have. They pretend don't exist or they haven't figured it out yet, right? It's like all these alternative power sources, that they pretend don't exist or, but are patented and tested and the guys who always are behind it and try to bring it to public or show it or demonstrate it all commit suicide. Do you ever notice like every time a guy comes up with a cure for cancer, he commits suicide, or a guy comes up with some kind of like better car that gets, 500 miles to the gallon, like, and he commits suicide. I mean, it's, the whole conspiracy world, that's what they call it, but it's not a conspiracy because if it's a guy, how could it be a conspiracy? Right? Conspiracy means you need at least two people to conspire. That's another thing. People don't even grasp that. But anyway, since that's the language, I wanted to get off, so I was talking about this Lionel guy who's on YouTube, on this universe, the YouTube universe, YouTube TV. This is TV today, as Tom Green says. And, he doesn't know what to do these days, I mean, because, I feel for him, but it's like, the audiences are dwindling because people either want something to believe in. It's like a Steve Miller song. They want the cult of personality. They want some burning issue, right? They're so like programmed, for that. The media has done a successful job. I mean, this goes back to Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message and the media is the massage and all that kind of stuff. And there was even some scarier people before that talked about that. This guy Adorno. There's a really good quote from him in like one of my initial books. I'm trying to reach here for it. There it is. Who I quoted. It's funny, this was the book. This is the booklet, I should say, my original venture, The Truth About Everything. My first jumping into this was back in 2002. It was copyrighted. I probably wrote it 2001. This was like when all the weird, crazy stuff was going on because of post 9/11 and the Patriot Act and stuff. And on my forward, a quote is, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." George Orwell. You know, but just to see where my head was, almost 20 years ago. And I'm just going to give you a couple reading here because this is interesting. I haven't looked at this thing in a long time. This is my forward. 80 and a decade or so ago, surrealism surfaced as a movement in art and in literature in Paris. In an era of industrialization and war, humans grappled with reality and a growing need for escape. A futuristic vision that few, if any, of our forefathers would have conceived in the formation of this nation. After all, America was the dream of the enlightened, of the 18th century intellectuals, the result of the Enlightenment's pursuit of heaven on earth. Feudalism behind them, the Protestant capitalist society, US of A, promised life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness for all. And then I get into how that didn't happen. But what I was looking for is, I had this other thing, the dumbing of America. It was 20 years ago. This is stuff people are just talking about now. That's the thing that cracks me up. When you're ahead of your time, the consumerism society, or how we work to perpetuate the state. Yes, this is Tony Caravan Live. This happens. Okay. Now, this was a thing. This is the culture industry. Now, I'm going to read a little quote by a guy named Theodore Adorno from, this is like, the quote is from something he wrote, I guess, in 1991. This guy's like kind of some scary guy, though. I mean, because I think he's a propagandist or something like that. I mean, but I don't want to say anything defamatory about the guy, but I mean, I've seen some odd things that he's been involved in, but you make your own decision on where his head's at, what's going on. This is a quote. Insofar as at least I gave him the credit here, so it's like, and I'm turning you on to him, so it's, insofar as the culture industry arouses a feeling of well-being that the world is precisely in that order suggested by the culture industry, the substitute gratification which it prepares for human beings cheats them out of the same happiness which it deceitfully projects. The total effect of the culture industry is one of anti-enlightenment, in which, as Horkheimer and I have noted, I guess somebody wrote a book with, enlightenment, that is the progressive technical domination of nature, becomes mass deception and is turned into a means for fettering consciousness. It impedes the development of autonomous, independent individuals who judge and decide consciously for themselves. Theodore Adorno. So I don't know why I've read something since then, like this is almost 20 years ago, negative about him. But I mean, that's a great quote, and he seems to be right on target. So ignore my saying anything negative about the guy until I could, the uniform of conformity. Anyway, I'm not going to go through that whole book, but I just wanted to bring that kind of thing up. And so these guys, booklet, I should say. That was around the same time I was doing this kind of stuff. Antarctica. That's my design for a project, an expedition. Get that out of the way. This is just a flow of consciousness, by the way, but it is going to feed into the graphic you saw, which is a great graphic I made this morning. By the way, if I must say so myself. So the reason we, Danger Will Robinson is in the space junk idea. Like that's what the Earth really looks like. So if you look at that title card again, or after the show, take a glance at it. See, some of my title cards, I would say most, are probably some of the best title cards, YouTube, the things you see on YouTube as you scroll through to see what to watch, or that pop up on your recommended list or something, are like some of the coolest things. I mean, because I have that background, I'm graphic background. And people still don't click. It's so weird. And, I'm having been, a creative director and involved in advertising, media, and entertainment. Like I know what works from a behavioral standpoint, right? I mean, you could see the stuff that I was quoting and writing even 20 years ago, but I've had this head 30, 40 years ago. I got vast experience in this thing. In other words, it's the whole Pavlovian contact, the dog salivating to the metronome. Okay. There are certain things about humans that, work. So the only way they don't work, it's like in that old Star Trek original series thing. Hey, Scotty, the thing is, there was that one where they went back in this Wild West planet. And it was just like a real weird set, just the buildings and the things they needed. It was like the OK Corral. They were going to have to like shoot it out at the old OK Corral. And Spock, they were trying to deal with, they created some kind of this gas thing because they figured, well, we don't want to do harm. We just want to get off this planet, out of this whatever thing that we're being forced to participate in. And so they created like some kind of knockout gas so that they could just, not have to fight, have this gunfight at the OK Corral. Basically, they were each like Doc Holliday and all that, each of the various characters. So they tried it. They tested it on Scotty, right? Like Scotty, did you breathe it in? I Captain, deeply. And then Spock said, well, it had to work. It's a scientific, by the laws of nature, there's no way it could not have worked. And so they came up and he was going to use the Vulcan mind meld on people, because Bones said, well, not everyone can be so certain as you, Spock. Right. So he did the mind meld or whatever, or did some kind of thing that basically saying the bullets are not real. They will pass through you. Right. And so that when they approached this thing, these characters were, shooting him up, but nothing happened because they knew it wasn't real. They were convinced it wasn't real, so therefore it wasn't real, and they could not be harmed by it. And because that was a rather long story, I forget what I was trying to prove by going down that route. I hate when that happens. What was I talking about? So it has something to do with the basic laws of nature going against, you have violated the laws of nature, Mr. Beale. But it wasn't that. But in many ways, I guess, let me just try to work my way around this and see if it comes back to me, because I mean, this whole that whole concept in and upon itself is still an interesting idea. Is that there are many things out there right now that not only violate common sense and, just logic in general, but they're trying to shove things down people's throats that violate the laws of nature. And, that just simply are so off the wall that, you can't, a person like me is just like totally dumbfounded, befuddled, by it. And, and not to leave you hanging on Lionel, if he's entertaining, he's a character, and that's part of his shtick, is to be a character. He knows that, but what I was talking about, and I'll just track into that, and maybe we'll get to where we want to be, was that people need to have, I was saying that in the absence of some sort of cult of personality, in the absence of some thing that people can get behind to believe in, right? Like that letter, right? That was being, used previously, that I think you're not even allowed to mention a certain letter of the alphabet anymore. I mean, this banning censorship thing is crazy. And the idea that my chat has totally disappeared, is something that's kind of funky, There's weird stuff going on, But, it's just beyond, I mean, it is surreal, right? It is theater of the absurd. It is the House of Horrors. Like I mentioned I just constantly re-mention various videos, because the body of work that I've produced over these live shows, and while many have been even like the beginning of this thing, you go through these 20-minute parts of the show where it's just me being doing weird stuff, or even playing cows. But then again, it's still to go, hey, it's a corporatocracy. We're cattle on a tax farm to them, consumer farm to them, and all that stuff. Like that Adorno guy said, now that was 30 years ago, that quote I read, and he was spot on. So people are so messed up right now through conditioning is another word you can say, not more so than indoctrination. It's just like conditioning. It's hard to choose the word, because if you say a certain word, that brings up that idea. Oh, it's tinfoil hat conspiracy. But to me, that's interesting stuff, because everything is. Everything is. It's like everything is wrong. That's what that quote up there is. The light, everything is wrong. Game over. GreatSolarStuff.com. So, when you're in that kind of like, as I think it was on yesterday's title of yesterday's video, we're in uncharted territory. When things are that bizarre, there was another thing I was thinking of doing. See, I'm all over the place. This is free flow of consciousness. I wanted to go to Universal Access and switch this monitor to black on white. Yeah. See how that looks. I could still see my sound effects. I don't particularly like that thing, But, you know, it's just kind of more, you know, spooky, right? Spooky Mulder. You can't see Mulder's thing, poster or anything anymore. But
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
so Elon Musk is sending up all the space junk. You know, not only is he drilling holes, wants to drill holes in people's heads and have these little things in there, you know, to merge man with machine because of his fear of AI taking over the world, man. He's like lost it. But he's adding more space junk up there for this Starlink, right? He's got Neuralink, Starlink. He was trying to build tunnels under LA. You know, it's just weird stuff. Self-driving cars, you know, he's like all in on that. You know, his cars all have that automatic, you know, they take autopilot type of thing. And it just shows, you know, what a lot of money, you know, and a smart mind, you know, he's an engineering mind and a smart mind, just how they could be so misguided. It's like it's like what they did with, I talk about all the time, the bird killers, the windmills. You know, these things have been around. They started in California like 50 years ago. And now they're just these like things that are abandoned. They don't work. They don't function. Nobody wants to take claim for them. The regulations at the time when they built a lot of these things, there was no responsibility for the person that constructed them to deconstruct them and to return the environment back to normal or replace them or anything like that. And you've got landscapes and seascapes all over this country that are just like ruined, just totally destroyed. You know, I've used a photo a couple of times from Trey Fergus. He's a viewer of this show. And he's a photographer and a man of many talents, has been involved in the concert industry and, you know, many productions in the film industry. And he's embarked on this venture over the past several months, maybe longer, of taking pictures of morning sunsets, or sunrises, morning sunrises, you know, on beaches and stuff like that, down somewhere in the Carolinas. I don't know where. I won't give away his location, but give him credit. I used one of his photos on one of my title cards, just like within the past week. And, you know, fortunately these are beautiful pictures. I wish I could show one, but it's another limitation of, you know, this live streaming YouTube studio TV thing. But, you know, in many places, not particularly where he's taking his photos, that's why his photos look so good. But there are a lot of places now where you might have looked out at a seascape to watch the sunrise or sunset, depending on, you know, whether you're east or west. And you're going to view windmills, or someone who had this beautiful view of a mountain, mountain range, snow-capped mountains, or a beautiful valley of wildflowers, and things like that. And some farmer just sold out, rented his, leased his field to this energy company, filled it with these bird killers, windmills, and totally destroyed that environment. It's hard to drive along any like major highway anymore and not see these things, right? At one time driving, like I say, I don't drive anymore, but just like I don't fly anymore, I've logged more driving and flying miles than probably most people alive today. I crisscrossed this country, in my little car, so many times, east coast to coast, a lot of coast to coast trips, and north and south, and places in between. And like I say, I've flown 100,000 air miles, or whatever, over both oceans and all that, and all around. I'm sorry for that. And it was beautiful, and it was part of the whole experience. I can remember on several of my trips, a lot of my trips, but several trips standing out, like particularly like down on going to LA, picking up the southern route around Oklahoma, Oklahoma, Texas, heading west, where sometimes you can see old Route 66. As you're heading west, you can see like Route 66 to your right, the abandoned place. Some places, there's a couple of places, it's so close that I was able to like pull over and actually, stop and look in the windows of these old restaurants and gas stations and stuff there that, like, once the new highway came in and Route 66 was abandoned, they just stopped. And there's like the salt and pepper shakers are still on the tables and stuff. I mean, the people they just up and left. Yeah. But, apart from that kind of tragedy, in a sense, this idea of the highway system, taking away that idea of the enjoyment of the ride, right? And, so that was like the early stage, well, just get there, right? Well, if you really wanted people to get there, why didn't you just push mass transportation? They have an Amtrak. There is an Amtrak north, but it's like, it takes forever to get, it's not like you're going to want to, something people really, it's not exactly a good thing, Like I said, I've taken a sleeper car from Philly to Orlando train years ago. Not that many years ago, but I don't know. Well, about 20 years ago. 20 some? Yeah, about 20 years ago. And it was half decent, but still leaves you off in Orlando too, which is like getting out of Orlando, you have to take a bus. It's like you're in the middle of nowhere because they just basically, that all became like a bigger area because of Disney. So, and they basically, it's like, oh, you're going to Disneyland. But if you're not, it's like, we're not going to help you. It's like near where I live too. It's like there are neighboring towns that are only like a half hour away, but there's no transportation to them. And there's another thing here. There's a train that comes through my town. So I can get a train here out, like in either directions, east or west, but they don't have it to like the neighboring cities. They intentionally don't have it so that you can do a day trip. Isn't that messed up? Like you can get a morning train going east or going west or something, or an evening train, vice versa, whatever it is. But there's no way you can get a train where you can like go in the morning, to another city, the next city over, that would normally be a miserable drive, but it just got a train and you could be right in the center of the city. You go shopping, you can hang out with some people, you can go grab lunch, walk around, spend a good day there. And then you would think you should be able to hop on the train at 6 or 7 and, be back home, and that would be maybe only, an hour or so's ride. But they intentionally don't do that. I always blame that's some kind of conspiracy between the Automobile Association of America or something weird like that. Somebody must have lobbied every like city council. Excuse me. I always say the media, they're just used car salesmen. And I point out that thing. It's like if you look in the newspaper, you're always going to see a full page ad for cars. You turn on the morning news, any local network affiliate, you're going to see car commercials, right? So when they're not selling cars, they're selling pharmaceuticals. And then, as I always say, then the lawyer commercials telling you that the pharmaceuticals that they were advertising the previous year are, killed people or maimed people or whatever. But it's still cars. And, this is this whole thing with the highway. It's like they forced people, it was forget about that idea that I covered in a video, perception is reality idea, that they make us think that a car, they have us brainwashed, right? That a car actually looks cool, right? You ever think about that? Cars don't really like look cool. It doesn't matter. I don't, Maserati, Porsche, whatever. You can name any car. Shelby GT or something. Corvette, classic Vet, classic Stang, right? And people like, you look at these things and go like, wow. And like I said in a video, I'm not going to repeat that whole thing, how I myself find myself that I was conditioned, as I mentioned earlier, to find a car. The car industry is, the automotive industry is like a major driver in this country that's really led to a lot of, is a big player in the corporatocracy. And that's one of the things that the Green New Deal people are going to be up against. Though you notice that they're talking about, when they do talk about this whole thing, it's the idea of cars. It's either self-driving cars, which is a total insane thing. Okay. If you're not going to be doing the driving, if you're just going to be sitting there watching a movie or doing something goofy in your car, well, wouldn't it make more sense to be on a mass transportation, cool, monorail or some high-speed train instead of a self-driving car? But see, the automotive industry lobby is so strong. And then the same is with electric cars, so, well, we got to put electric car charging stations, 50,000 of them across the 5,000 or 50,000, whatever's like recently been proposed. And people just like, they listen to this stuff and they don't think about it. And they don't realize that everything Well, everything you know is wrong, and you don't know what you don't know. Get the shirt. But it's the most comfortable shirt in the world. I'm telling you, it's comfortable. They come in all sizes. All sizes. I put on some weight. As you can see, my face looks a little bit chipmunky. I just got this last 15 pounds I put on. I just can't get rid of. And it's not like, it's diet soda and coffee. I had a salad yesterday. I don't know. Today I'm going to walk, I'm walking to the grocery store, and I'll be coming back carrying bags. Oh, I have to get back to the EBT thing too. But I want to finish this car thing. So, excuse me. They've ruined this highway idea. I have to get rid of that. How could he move a fireplace? That's the whole thing. It's weird. So that's one of the absurdities of it. I'm losing my voice right now. It usually happens at about this time,
The now sound. Another hour of music power.
Well, we're into the second hour, but unfortunately, we're not going to be hearing any music. So think about that. So you drive along the roads now, this massive highway system, basically Eisenhower's, dream, his movement. And you're confronted with you see these bird killers, windmills all over the place. Of course, like I said before in other videos, our electric bills haven't gone down. And these things have a life. Usually after about 15 years, most of the energy companies kind of give up on them because they don't want to maintain them, And what I've also said before, I don't know why I have to repeat that, but I guess I shouldn't even bother. I just don't want people saying, well, he does the same thing every day. I'm just trying to for that one or two persons that's going to say that. But who cares what you say? Okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. Warning. This show contains repetitive information because I'm trying to jackhammer it into your thick skull. Okay. The idea of a windmill is that not only do they fail, right? The energy companies give up on them after about 15 years. They have a life expectancy of about 20 something. If they were perfectly maintained, it's like a car, they could go longer. But I mean, it's the guy who's like in the old days, you can't maintain a newer car because there's computer chips in it. So the only way to really maintain a newer car, you'd have to be replacing boards, computer, hard drive, not hard drives, but, actually motherboards and chips and, all that kind of stuff. It's not like, you could just be greasing and oiling and, cleaning and, wire brushing off your contacts on your battery or changing your plugs and filters and all. You know what I mean? Especially like a Tesla. What's the life expectancy of a Tesla? These complicated cars with autopilot and stuff. Right? Think about that. So, but anyway, so we live in a lot of people just don't grasp this concept that we live in an automotive society. So here's the real kicker though. Okay. So what they're trying to do is the Automobile Association realizes, and I don't know if it's the Automobile Association, I mean, not AAA or whatever, but these various lobby groups. Associations are usually lobby groups. All right. So like I said, I'm not pointing a finger at any particular. Don't misconstrue something here. All right. I'm talking in general. Association meaning you associating with someone else, as opposed to an association that may or may not exist in this country or anywhere on this planet. Okay, you got that? Monitors. But anyway, so however these people are organized or unorganized, there's two interesting things that tie the two of these things together: windmills and cars and automobiles or automotive industry, say. And that is the carbon-based fuels, right? So first of all, you're not going to be able to convert all automobiles to, well, you're not going to be able to convert. I mean, it takes a certain guy. I've seen things where guys have converted a car to electric. But I mean, you're not going to be able to replace, the better word, have everyone buy an electric car to meet some Agenda 2030 goal, right? Isn't this whole thing 8 years, this 8-year plan to do this thing, or whatever they're trying to say. They want to accomplish this. Well, there's just too many cars, out there. So let's just do like our quick little thing. Okay. How many cars in the U.S.? 276 million vehicles. All right. Some 270 million vehicles were registered here in 2019. This figure includes passenger cars, motorcycles, trucks, buses, and other vehicles. The number of light trucks sold in the U.S. stood at 12 million units in 2009 or 2019. So that's official Statistica number, 276 million. So they're not gonna like have 276 million electric cars. All right. And people can't afford, like I say, cars, people can't afford to buy a new car, which goes back to the reason I'm getting EBT, electronic, what's the B stand for? Benefits transfer. That's the equivalent of food stamps. I was talking about the rich versus the poor. I started out and I got on a tangent. I'm not poor. I'm just living at a level that's below the poverty line on purpose. And so I qualify for that. So having worked, slaved, and paid in to my entire life, right? I have no problem whatsoever, getting money from the government, because it's basically my money. And I rather have it used, see it used for some positive thing, such as food, than to send missiles over to Syria, kill American soldiers for no reason whatsoever. But back to this automotive connection between the windmills and the cars. So you have this, they want to allegedly upgrade the highway system. All right. Which, according to the way I understand it, only 6% of the recent bill that they proposed bill really goes to that kind of thing. The rest of it goes to some like wacky stuff, but I may be wrong on that. So whatever, let's assume that everything's genuine and true. It's a live show. It's a Tony Caravanism. If I don't do that, I'd sneeze or I'd have, coffee on my mustache. So you're not going to be able to replace 276 million vehicles. Plus, the population's constantly increasing. And the sheer miles of roads that are out there that are, that have these windmills on them. So now they're ugly. And man's, mad pursuit, rat race pursuit to get to a place further. And this idea that they've divorced from our minds, this idea of the beauty of nature. Like I was saying, I've driven across the country and it was nothing more fantastic. I can't tell you how many times, particularly heading west, when I just pulled over to the side of the road. And of course, there wasn't a lot of traffic on a lot of these roads. And I just pulled over to the side of the road, got out, and just stood there and just like slowly, kind of turned around into 360 degrees to just take in the beauty of, of the landscape. I don't think I've told this story in a long time, but there was one time somewhere out there, past Oklahoma, heading west, that I had just come through a rainstorm. All right. This is an absolute true story. So it was like, cloudy, dark, thunder, rainstorm, almost, like you could hardly see, thunder, lightning, rainstorm. And as I noticed, and I was caught in the middle of that. But as I was heading, I'm on this road doing like 75 miles an hour because the speed limits are higher on those roads. So I'm zipping, in this straight line west. And I can start to see, it was the time of day, the sun, in the distance, like the sunset. The sun was it hadn't sunset, but I mean, the sun was low in the sky as if I was heading towards a tunnel of the sun. And as I did this and I reached this, I noticed the rain was diminishing. And so behind me in my rearview mirror, it was dark, cloudy, raining with like the occasional, you could see almost a lightning bolt off in the distance behind me, right? Imagine this scene. Look to the right, and here's like, the Great Divide, those mesas, all this, I'm talking anyone who's driven west, these rock formations, right? The continental divide type of stuff, right? Desert type thing. And off to my left, for some reason, because I just had gotten out of the rain, but it had rained there was a rainbow. And ahead of me was, driving west, was the sun was beginning to set. So the moment like I turned the wipers off and it wasn't raining, I pulled off to the side of the road. And I got out of the car real quick. And I stood there and I just looked over at this rainbow. I looked back at this thunderstorm off in the distance, thunder and lightning and rain. I looked over at this mesa, or whatever you want to call it, this beautiful natural formations, right? And then I turned and I looked forward to my direction. I was going west, and here's this beautiful sunset that I'm driving into the sunset, ultimately heading towards California, but I don't know where I was exactly, whether it was going into Arizona or New Mexico or something like that. Imagine that scene, right? And that's what it was like, and that's why I used to drive alone, because to experience something like that, it's And, and I just put it into words, but the words just can't explain what it was really like. And to be immersed in it in literally 360 degrees, not virtual reality, that was reality, because there was the smell of like that fresh smell still from just having this deluge, this downpour of the rain as and so it was the sight, the sound of the distant thunder, right? The smell of the, of it. This, it was just this full immersive experience of reality. And, and I think I recall a car passing by and somebody looking at me on the side of the road, looking at this stuff like, what, what's that guy's up to? What's his problem? It's like, in my mind, it's like, why wasn't everyone pulling over? Right? This is a experience of life. This was the reason why we're on this planet. This is a reason to exist. And I was caught up in it. But instead, people just want to zip on. So at 75 mile an hour, they just want to zip on at 85 and 90 miles an hour just to get to that destination. In other words, we're all going somewhere. Isn't that, it's like it's very telling about our lives, that concept too. We're ignoring the beauty of life, the instant, the moment, right? And as a species, and everybody's just speeding ahead towards something, but they don't even know what they're speeding ahead towards. And now, and over the past decades, they've taken these landscapes and they've put up these windmills and destroyed these views with these things. And now these things are starting to get old, and the energy companies are abandoning them because it requires fossil fuels. Excuse me. And because of heavy equipment and cranes to like do repairs and replace blades, Yeah, some guy they have like doors on them, and there's like these stairs you could climb up. These things are really high, the big ones. And yeah, some maintenance guy could climb up there and I guess grease something and maybe, mess with some wires or, tweak the motor or something like that. Right? But these blades are caked up with bugs. So they're no longer aerodynamically, they're no longer like as efficient as they used to be, because they just get caked up with bugs and pieces of, and I hate to say this, but like, because so many birds get killed by these things, just mess from having, birds flying into them. Bird graveyard below many of these places. But in order to, to hoist them requires fossil fuels. All right. So that's number one. They think they're going to make more of these things. Well, you can't at the same time eliminate fossil fuels, because the heavy equipment to raise them, right? Isn't battery run, right? And most of these places are out in areas where, you're not going, even if you had a crane that could be battery run, which you can't, it's not feasible. There would be so many batteries, that it's, it's just it's what I call a plumber's nightmare. It's a pipe dream. Plumber's nightmare. It's a pipe dream. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is they're holding on to cars. But when you have 276 million cars, as of 2019, right? And that's registered vehicles. So, who knows how many cars? There's probably 300 million cars out there, right? all these other cars. And then, these car graveyards, or these people sitting on cars that, in farmlands, they've got that, these trucks and stuff. They're not, some pickup truck that's goes back to the analog days, that's on the farm, and the farmer owns, 100 acres of land. If you're never taking your car on a state road, a federal road, or off of your property, you don't have to have it. These people they're not registering it. And those old pickup trucks, you take an old pickup truck like that, what I'm talking about, any kind of, especially a mechanic, you keep that thing running indefinitely. There's guys driving pickup trucks like that out in the country that are 40 years old. I mean, basically you had, you could, like I said before, when I used to drive across country, even in my old car, in my trunk, I had practically everything I needed that if I broke down that I could take care of, with the exception of the transmission, dropping, as they say. But other than that, really. And before any time I'd go on a long trip, I'd always make sure my transmission, fluids were fine, and that everything was, there would be no reason for me to have a transmission problem, put it that way, or a serious engine problem. Because when I used to drive on those things, I would just drive a steady, because I was, usually concerned on gas mileage sometimes, as if I didn't want to stop too many times along certain areas. I would find, you become in tune with your vehicle. I don't know if you can do that today with these new computerized vehicles, because your foot on that gas pedal is like you're almost connected to your carburetor, to the whole machine. And you can feel the when the engine was being stressed a little bit, right? And so you could kind of get into that optimal mode where the engine was just humming. You knew you were just in optimal mode. You weren't using, you weren't wasting any fuel whatsoever. It was and that's how I would drive. And I would enjoy the scenery. But that was before this, this littering of the roads with these behemoths that now are starting to fail. The energy companies are abandoning them. They catch fire, they just, there's all kinds of crazy stuff. And nobody wants to repair them, because originally they were built with government grants, government tax, rebates, incentives. And, and Wall Street was somehow involved in a lot of these deals, and they were kind of traded like commodities and stuff. And the way these energy companies, all this corporatocracy, the games that they play. And so, and the first generation of these weren't as efficient as the second generation are now. In fact, on a magnitude of double. In other words, some of the newer, larger ones, it's double the output, kilowatt wise. And so it's not cost effective for them to repair something that could only produce half the energy, as something. And there's some law passed in by the corporatocracy through Congress that gives them an incentive to, to get a grant or, a tax break. So it's better to build another than it is to repair the old. And so these things become like old ruins, Like I say, like old Greek and Roman ruins or something, just littering our highways and seascapes, landscapes, and all that stuff. Yeah, it's really sad when you think about it. And that's all the, so, that's, and then, and you got 276 million cars. You're not going to, they'll be lucky if they, if they could get a third of those electrified, sell 100 million cars, electric cars by, in the next decade. So none of this stuff, it's ridiculous. It's just not practical. And again, like I say, we're missing this movement towards artificial life, which brings back artificial reality, which brings back Elon Musk, and this man with machine and Google and all that stuff. It's, and then Facebook, because they've got they're into the VR headsets, they own that company. I forget the name of it is, Oculus. And it's like, it's like, why would you want a virtual reality, when you can have an experience like I described, just a moment ago? And, those experiences are all over. I had that experience yesterday in my own backyard. It was a sunny day. I had the lounge chair out. I was listening to some good music, actually some classical. I had a classical station on. And I'm watching these birds, and I had my little solar little fountain in my little mini pond. And I planted, looked at my lettuce plants that I planted the day before, and they're staying there. And I'm watching my apple tree that is now 7 feet tall, 7 or 8 feet tall. And it's, like I said before, it's from from an apple that I actually ate 3 or 4 years ago. I planted a seed from an apple I ate. And now I've got a 7 foot tall. I may get apples this year. It may take another year, but I may get apples. But I was noticing how the tree was, all budding out. So I'm watching nature come alive, feeling the heat of the sun, getting a sun tan type of thing, soaking up the vitamin D, listening to some good music, birds chirping, watching my immersed in my garden and fiddling about, in my little backyard world by myself. Like I say, it's the same as driving across the country. And so, that was, living life, just living life. And they'll do anything to get people out of, like, not letting people know how beautiful life is, and to really experience their five senses to the full extent that they can, and how beautiful this world is. Instead, they fear monger. They make people afraid of germs. They make people afraid of, of everything. And it's all this corporatocracy, and it's all fake. It's all weird. I mean, they're just selling cars to people. It's about cars. I mean, do the math yourself. 276, just figure it out, what they want to do within the next 10 years, say 8 to 10 years. So you would be around 300 million, if you were to replace the complete number of cars, because the government owns a lot of those vehicles. I mean, just think of there's postal trucks or little postal Jeep type things in every town in America. multiple ones, right? So just like multiply just the postal services vehicles times, 10,000 cities, or boroughs, townships, and all that stuff alone, right? The volume of vehicles, all right? And so, it's like, it's an incomprehensible amount. And then what are they going to do with these 276 million cars, right? It's like, how are they going to recycle them? What are they going to do with that? It's like, in other words, it's like this disposable society where they try to say everything's recyclable. It's like Apple saying their phones are recyclable. So they're not really recyclable. And to melt that glass and the forge, melt the aluminum, forge that thing and stuff. These things require like these comes from like companies that have fossil fuels. Like a lot of times they say, so I think this one energy company was caught, PR person from an energy company was caught on camera. She was touting, I've told this story before too. She was touting how that they had these charging stations, electric car charging stations. And some reporter, because you don't see many reporters asking any real questions anymore. That Chanel Rion, that babe, she'd ask this type of question, but this wasn't her. This was just in some weird town somewhere in nowhere, middle of nowhere, America type of thing. And some reporter asked a question and said, well, where does the energy for that electric car charging station come from? And this woman PR person, they always got some looker, right? PR, it's all a big game, these women who pretend they're feminist and they don't want to be objectified and stuff. But yet, they all are objectified by their own personal design, right? They're not exact, you don't see, someone with deformities getting a job as an anchor or as a PR person or whatever, right? Yeah, it's sick. They're just a bunch of lying hypocrites. Well, anyway, this little doll, right? Little Barbie doll, PR girl, right? She's stuttering. She doesn't. Well, I'm not exactly sure where that is. It's just that, and then she just didn't even know how to get out of it. So what happened was the reporter actually followed up with the energy company. This was amazing. This was like, you can catch this. This was an actual video clip I saw. And the energy company ended up saying, well, most of that, the energy that they get was from like coal, and, basically carbon based. I don't know why the YouTube thing popped up again. So, hypocrites. So yeah, you could put electric stations, electric car charging stations all over the country. And you could pretend that you're going to be able to like somehow, begin the transition, right? But, how are you going to generate the electricity without carbon fuels? Like, how are you going to rebuild the infrastructure in America? I showed you that picture. Like, this is just as an example. I mean, it's too bad I don't have more pictures. But these devices, this is a classic example of an infrastructure job. That is a saw. Like, you've seen guys saw wood, if you understand what, a skill saw is, or, this is like half the size, half as tall. Actually, it's probably almost as tall as a man because half of it is almost in the ground. They're like sawing open the highway there. All right. These things the amount of energy used and the spike of energy just to get that thing started. All right. That's another thing a lot of people don't understand. The demand, that instant demand. These things aren't running on electric. That's fossil fuels. Great lighting too. It'd be nice if it stayed this way. Weird effects happen sometimes when you hold things up to the camera. And then now it's starting to readjust itself. So that's the ultimate absurdity. And I always say, yeah, what are you going to do with fire trucks, hook and ladders and ambulances and things like that? They're never going to run on electric. I mean, there's no room there'd be no room for any of the equipment. There'd be so many batteries in there. And the demand of energy would be such that even if you were able to do it, that you would have to charge it like, 3 times during a fire or something. It's not practical. It's just not practical. And these people who propose these things, they just don't know it. So you've got to get back to space junk. So you got Elon Musk putting up more satellites in a planet that actually looks like that thing that I have as a title card, right? Communication satellites, spy satellites, all kinds of telecommunications, Wi-Fi satellites. Now you got internet satellites. It's just like, it's space junk. And then stuff from all these various launchings that just hanging there. It's not like a pretty planet. If you were coming here from, it's like that classic picture of the moon. If you go back to my bunny on the moon picture from the Easter title card, that if you were sitting on the moon looking at the Earth, you'd see the title card of today. You wouldn't see the Earth that the Apollo crew saw back in 69 or whatever, or wherever the last one was in the early 70s. Those days are over. So it's all space junk, right? And they're doing the same, so, and for no reason whatsoever. Oh, or we're providing 5G or Wi-Fi to rural communities and all of this kind of stuff. The thing is, there are ways of doing this stuff that are much more realistic and actually would create jobs, right? There's fiber optics, all that kind of thing. Like I say, get rid of the telephone poles. Every time there's a storm, okay, so you've got Tornado Alley, you've got hurricanes. We've talked about how none of that's related to climate change. It's just that more people live in places that previously, when there was a storm, there was no damage or no deaths because nobody ever lived there, right? Florida was a swampland. The Gulf Coast wasn't that populated. But anyway, you go out throughout, even here, we had like 60-mile-an-hour gusts a week or two ago, and that happens. And I'm up in the mid-Atlantic, right? You get storms, and people think, oh, it's because of climate change. It's like, no, it's been happening. It happens all the time. It's cyclical. It's based on, all kinds of things. There's a lot of geomagnetic things going on right now because we're entering, a grand solar minimum and all that. Magnetic poles are moving and everything, messing with everything from the jet stream to, who knows what. But, you look out in most towns, not every town, but in most towns, cities, boroughs, townships, villages, whatever, reservations. And you still see these like telephone poles or power lines. That's the grid. They talk about we're going to update the grid. Excuse me. Well, if you want to update the grid, get rid of those poles and put this stuff conduit underground. You know, and that way, when a tornado comes through or a hurricane or just these gusts of wind, you don't, or a car, you know, some crazy drivers like texting while they drive and hit a pole, and that pole happens to have a transformer on it or something, right? That supplies electricity to the downtown area, half the downtown area, which has happened in places that I've lived already in some smaller areas. And the power's out for the entire day because of some stupid driver hit a pole, right? Or when you get ice, the whole northern United States has gets strong winters, and despite what people are saying, they've been getting like more brutal or colder. The planet's cooling, not heating up. And so, get ice on these lines, and trees fall, on power lines, which is another thing. Then they have to take this heavy equipment out to the middle of nowhere to like clear these highways or where trees are downed or power lines are down. That stuff doesn't run on electric. And like, how would you recharge? Because the power lines are down. So there's no electricity to that point, right? How are you going to fix a bridge out somewhere, across the Mississippi that's in an area, or along one of these highways I was describing that are out there where there's nothing nearby for 100 miles, right? Where are you going to charge your electric car, right? And it's like, so they don't even think about that stuff. So it's like they're like student council members in 7th or 8th grade proposing things. And it's like, maybe if you're a parent, you might think it's cute that they're the naivete, but it's like, well, couldn't we do this? Or what if we did that? It's like the AOCs and these people, right? We're going to make a better world and everything will be cool. And when, no more CO2 in the atmosphere and everyone will be happy and whatever. It's like, what are you talking about? You got to deal realistically. Everybody wants a perfect, beautiful world. It is a perfect, beautiful world if you really like live it, open your eyes, your ears, and use your senses and stop messing with it, right? Messing with it. Just fix the things that, are wrong. We don't need a great reset. Right? There's nothing wrong that needs a reset. We just need to repair. Innovate. We don't need more satellites in the sky, more space junk. Right? It's insane. I needed another can of diet black cherry, so I'm just now into like pretty much pure tail end of the coffee. But this isn't, nobody talks like this. They refuse to go in depth and in detail. It's like I say, to get back to this EBT, this food stamp idea. They don't have food stamps anymore. It's just you get a card, and it's like an ATM card. I'm wheezing because I'm talking so much. It's like you can't talk. Humans weren't meant to talk for 2 hours in the morning. But it's like, you can, if you are poor, like this is what bothers me the most about, like when I see these I'm no longer interested in politicians and how everything's just, how they're just messing with everybody's. They mess with your perception. They're indoctrinating. They're, propagandizing. It's just everything is wrong. everything you know is wrong. Get the shirt, for crying out loud. And you don't know what you don't know. You know? Game over. Or then what? That's a great shirt. I have that upstairs. I just washed that. I should have wore that one today, actually. But people are clueless, and they're just like messing with people's minds so much that it's the whole danger Will Robinson. It's like this technocracy, corporatocracy, as I call it, is totally out of control. It's not AI like Elon, like I say about Elon Musk, is worried about AI. So we have to merge man with machine so the AI won't kill us. We'll be a part of it. No, it's nothing like that at all, man. It's this out of control corporatocracy for the sake of this absolute insatiable greed, right? That needs trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And these marionettes, because the corporatocracy are puppeteers, and these marionettes that they put in that are formerly used to be elected officials, but they're not elected. They're appointed. They're picked, hand chosen. They're marionettes. They're mouthpieces, right? The Republicans and Democrats are two sides of the same counterfeit fiat coin. And the biggest lie that's out there, is this idea. Another lie is like, to get back, is this, if you consciously, like I have, there are times where I could live well. I get job offers all the time and stuff. I've turned them down. I stopped working. All right. I retired. All right. Because I figured it out. About 7 years ago. I looked at it and go, I could struggle and, try to live some kind of so-called good life, which I was living, and then get old or get sick, and then have to wonder, do I have enough? This is what these people getting older think about. You see these commercials on TV. I cut the cord. I don't have it anymore. But when I did, you'd see commercials on TV from these funds, retirement funds. The average person will need such and such X amount of money if they live to be such and such an age, to live, to maintain their wealth or their lifestyle or blah, blah, blah. And, so there's a simple solution to that. And it's basically is just scale down your life, your cost of living. If you're living in the rat race, if you're unhappy doing what you're doing, then just scale down, and start realizing that there's a real world out there, not a virtual world. And the technocracy and the corporatocracy is just a ruse. It's a control mechanism. It's, they're just pulling trillions and trillions of dollars out to, create, a couple thousand people are ruling the world in effect. And so what I decided, and, coming up to the end of this show, I think, is that I said, well, yeah, I could keep the rat race up, keep doing all these projects, keep drinking caffeine, sodas, and sitting 16 hours in front of a computer, or doing this and doing that, gaining weight, hurting my health. Or I could scale down. I could buy a cheaper piece of property, affordable piece of property, and I could live below the poverty line. And that's what I do. I bought a cheap house. My mortgage, taxes, and insurance are less than $200 a month. So as it turns out, I live below the poverty line. So I get food stamps, free health care, 100% free health care, no deductions. Occasionally, if I had a prescription, I would get like maybe pay $1, but I don't really get prescriptions. I had a couple operations and they were fully covered, fully covered with some of the best surgeons. Johns Hopkins surgeon performing an 8-hour operation on me. Imagine that. I had 2 major operations and like 3 or 4 other ones. I went through some stuff, knock on wood. I'm still here. And I looked at this and go, what are these other people doing? Why are these people out picketing and angry faces and discontent when a guy like me bought this house? In fact, because this, in other words, I looked this morning and my EBT card was charged with like $130. Okay. I'll be like quite honest with you. I'm not ashamed of saying any of this stuff. I don't care. I lived in a penthouse in New York. I lived in a townhouse in Capitol Hill. I lived in a Malibu mansion, basically overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Right? I lived in a exclusive building in Center City, Philadelphia. Right? Traveled across both oceans. Been all over the place. And that doesn't even talk about other positions and jobs and cities that I've been in, been there, done that. So I don't care, I've done more than half the phonies out there are still like posing and playing games. But I said, heck with that. Been there, done that. I did it. I don't care. Married twice, had a half dozen decent long-term relationships with some hot women. I lived a very full life, and it's still, enjoyable. Still full. That's why I'm doing this. I don't make money on this. I'm just sharing this to you. I live below the poverty line. Nobody's buying anything, right? I got 10 books and 50 songs out there. I'm not making any money on them though. So my advice to you is what I'm trying to say is that just, detach yourself from this. If you're living the rat race and you're not happy, just scale down your lifestyle. So I have everything. I have a 1.5 bath house. I have everything I want. I'm going to go walk to the grocery store in about 5 or 10 minutes because this show is coming to an end in about 10 or 15 minutes. Grab some stuff, and why not? And I have free health care and I get the food. And, my furnace needed some repairs and they fixed that for free for me because I'm below the poverty line. So why are these people, these so-called poor people, these people like they, they want to live like the people they see in commercials or in sitcoms or on TV and in the movies. That's what that's all about. Envy, right? And that's what the corporatocracy does, is they show this unrealistic thing. It's not like the Archie Bunker days, right? Where they showed this guy living on, and they copied that kind of with, it was that guy Married with Children show, right? The classic, that house could have been like a row home almost, right? That was no design. He had no designer furniture in that place, right? It was like Archie It was almost the layout of Archie Bunker's house. Well, that's how a lot of people live. Now, I don't live in Archie Bunker's house. I live the way I want to. My front room has got like, someone might look at this and think I'm some trader, e-trader, or day trader, whatever you want to call it, because I've got multiple computers set up and stuff. And I've got a bar in my kitchen, and stuff like that. So I live well, but I live below the poverty line because these are things that I've acquired, and you just try to maintain what you have. And when the government gives you $1,400, you don't go waste it. You go, okay, let me make sure I have what's broken or what's near broken, or what do I need a backup on, and how supply wise, let me get myself some extra, this, that, the other. That's what I've done. That's what I did with mine. And it's not hard to do. It's really not hard to do. The Morning Show. Tony Caravan, TonyCaravanLive.com, and GreatSolarStuff.com. You can get stuff there.
Good morning.
I guess I'm just going to end it here. It seems like this video happened. It's just kind of weird that the interface was weird today. So. But yeah. All these people are doing is putting more space junk up in low Earth orbit and ruining our landscapes with things that are not going to have any consequence or help the people, increase the quality of life of the people living in this country, or Western civilization for that matter. And all their lies about this, greening and doing this thing and stuff, they're just lies, because everything they're doing is going to require the U.S. They better get back. They better rehook up that pipeline and actually double or quadruple their efforts. Because my prediction is, in order to do the things they're claiming they're going to try to do, imagine trying to build 100 factories to build 100 million more electric cars, right? And to, retool and fix the infrastructure of this country, all requiring forged steel. You're talking about operating factories. It's almost like they've even said that it would be it's equivalent to a World War II, wartime effort, intensity that they're trying to do. Well, that's going to require so many carbon-based fuels, because we simply don't have the electric to do it, that the U.S. is going to become an oil importer. If this goes through within 6 to 18 months, we'll be back to importing oils. And I think that's why they're back in the Middle East, and we'll be back with Middle Eastern wars again. I mean, it's so hypocritical. And the corporatocracy, remember, that's big tech, big data, big ag, big pharma, the military industrial complex, which is really big part of the corporatocracy, and the media, of course, which is, the propaganda wing of the whole thing. And there's some other aspects of it too, the financial. Let's not forget Wall Street, the financial industry, and the central banks, Federal Reserve, and the various central banks. And then you have the EU, UN, World Economic Forum, crazy madmen, who rival some of the craziest dictators of the last century. And nobody seems to see it this way. And certainly no one ever is going to watch a 2-hour video like this, except me. So for those who may or may not have watched this, good luck. But think about it. I described some interesting things in this one. And over my body of work, I've gotten into detail on, there's so much you can do to improve your life, and just live your life and realize these 5 senses in the beautiful world we have. We don't need to reset anything. We don't need to be afraid of the boogeyman germs and stuff like that. What we need to do is just get back, right, to just living life and experiencing it on a daily basis, using our five senses, and fix the things, improve the things, get rid of those poles, those power lines, and put that stuff underground so storms aren't going to take away the electric anymore. Get rid of those windmills. All right. It was a nice idea, I guess, in the mind of that T-Bones picking guy or whatever. He must have profited on it. But it didn't work. It was a failure. And sometimes you have to admit technologies fail. Right? The Betamax didn't work. The laser disc didn't work. All right. Didn't take. They found better things. Now we have digital. All right. You know, sometimes you just have to admit there are ways of solving these problems, but they're not what they're talking about. Reset and rebuilding the same thing or more of failed ventures, and taking more away of the beauty of nature and the beauty of the senses and the experiential thing that makes life, right? That's what life is all about. And all these unhappy people, right? In push to this materialistic consumerism, that they've lost complete touch with reality and are living in these virtual worlds instead of realizing the real world is so far more like intense and you know, than some fake virtual world. You know, use technology as a tool, right? Like I am. I love it. It's great. But don't be a slave to technology, right? Don't let it rule your life. Use entertainment to pass the time, you know, to escape, to have enjoyment, you know, entertain yourself. Don't be obsessed with it. And whatever you do, the news, there's no such thing as the news. All right? No such thing as the news. That's just a bunch of that's just the propaganda. Anyway, I could go on, and there's no reason to. I got to go to the grocery store and get some food. I'm hungry. All right, take care. Peace. Cheers. Think. Use your brain. Think.